All right, start this from the beginning. All right, so my topic is over the competence to exercise the right to remain silent. So we're just going to go ahead and get into some quick definitions. So the right to remain silent protects individuals from incriminating themselves. Competence is the capability to do something or understand something successfully and efficiently. So, just some important information to know. Even if a defendant was competent at the time of confession when being interrogated, the defense will still make the argument that the defendant was incompetent when giving self incriminating statements to waive their rights. An evaluation then might be done by a mental health professional to provide input about the defendant's competence. Mental health evaluations are important for a diagnosis and if treatment planning needs to occur, especially when they are court ordered. So, law of confessions, police tactics and deceit from law enforcement when defendants are being interrogated have been viewed as unfair and going against the suspect's will. Some police tactics include lying to obtain confessions, the length of the interrogation, and threats or harm. There are now standards for assessing the admissibility of confessions due to this. So, just some important rights and amendments. The Fifth Amendment guarantees the right to a grand jury, forbids double jeopardy, and protects against self-incrimination. The Sixth Amendment protects the rights of the accused in criminal prosecutions. The Due Process Law guarantees that the government follows established rules and treats people fairly. And the Miranda versus Arizona was a landmark case where law enforcement must warn a person of their constitutional rights before interrogating them. These Miranda rights, also known as per se rules, means that defendants must knowingly, intelligently, and voluntarily know what they're doing when giving a confession. And understand that if the defendant is not so cognitively impaired that it affects their ability to understand the right to remain silent, then information given by the defendant can be admissible. So, mental health professionals play a critical role in the interrogation process and evaluating whether the defendant had the capacity to understand their rights, especially when under pressure when being interrogated. So, examinations focus on suggestibility, that describes an individual's tendency to accept or act on suggestions from others. Intellectual functioning describes a person's intelligence. For example, are they able to reason or problem solve appropriately? Oral and reading comprehension. Does the person understand what they're reading and saying? And then situational factors. Situational factors are external influences that impact a person's life. So, was the defendant intoxicated? Did they have any mental health concerns? So, to continue on that, these factors can affect the defendant's understanding of their rights. Mental health professionals hold the weight of confessions based on those three factors that we discussed knowingly, intelligently, and voluntarily. So, vulnerability 23% of adults do not understand their Miranda rights. Most vulnerable are juveniles and individuals with limited intellectual abilities. Juveniles are most vulnerable because their brains are not fully developed. They're more susceptible to social influences. They might not fully understand their rights and the types of interrogation techniques used, which we will talk about a little later. Um, and then people with mental health concerns typically have more interactions with law enforcement. They could be more sensitive to stress, can have an impaired cognitive state, and police can misinterpret symptoms of mental illness for something else, such as being guilty or hiding something. Defendants should first be questioned about their understanding of the Miranda rights during interrogation. So this leads me to false confessions. False confessions is a confession of a crime in which the individual did not commit. This is used through coercion, police maximization techniques. Police maximization includes saying things like failure to confess can lead to a more negative consequence. Police minimization techniques. This is when interrogators might pretend to be wanting to help. Interrogations that last longer than 3 hours. Interrogations that last longer than 3 hours, 90% of false confessions come after interrogations that lasted more than these 3 hours. If a defendant is under stress, and then if they're isolated, typically interrogators, they isolate the defendants in a small room away from any familiar surroundings. So we will watch this short clip. And then I do have one more video. All right. So then to finish it off, I'm just going to leave us off with a discussion question, just based off of what we talked about today. So why is it so important to be competent when exercising the right to remain silent? And these are my references.